with Sierra Club. I work as an organizer for the Everglades Restoration Campaign as well as the Resist campaigns. And first, I want to thank everybody for joining in. Good afternoon, and happy 50th Earth Day. So welcome everybody. Like I said, this is being recorded. Today, is Earth Day, an annual event that started 50 years ago in 1970. In a speech that was delivered by the former Senator Gaylord Nelson, who started this idea, the night before that first Earth Day, he articulated the need for a broad, inclusive vision of ecology and new environmentalism to support the well-being of all people, all creatures, regardless of their location and their ability to pay. Today, in an email that came in from the New York Times, the reporter, reflected on what Earth Day means 5 decades later. And he said something along the lines, that today, the air that we breathe and the water that we drink is much cleaner, at least in many parts of the country, not necessarily everywhere. We don't use DDT, asbestos, but there are other threats that have arisen. And the biggest of those wasn't even in the radar screen for most people back in 1970, which was climate change caused from human causes. Now we recognize that these threats are even more fundamental and ultimately even more harmful than it was 50 years ago. So the 50th anniversary of Earth Day marks a turning point. We can continue business as usual, or we can join together to rebuild our economy to protect people, both from the current crisis that we're in with the coronavirus and the coming climate emergency. And I personally couldn't think of a better, more meaningful way to celebrate Earth Day than to lift up the voices of partners and community leaders across Florida that are serving frontline communities that are disproportionately affected by this coronavirus crisis and vulnerable to the issues of climate change. We'll hear both, stories of struggles as well as hope. And I welcome them to also explain, how all these issues interconnect with each other and changes that are needed to address them. So I hope everybody stays with us for an hour and a half and that you will forgive any little technical things that we'll try to sort out. I know Valencia is still having a bit of a problem connecting her audio, so we'll try to figure that out. I'm going to actually turning next. Oops, sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, so we went over this introduction on Earth Day, and I want to then turn in and introduce to you the panelists that you're going to be listening from today. Just very quick bios that I'll read about them. From the Farmworkers Association of Florida, today we have Jeannie Economos. Jeannie has worked for decades on issues of environmental justice, climate change, indigenous and immigrant rights, labor, peace, and social justice. She began working for the Farmworkers Association in 1996 and is currently serving as their pesticide safety and environmental health project coordinator, and engaged in a broad range of issues such as violations regarding the workers' protection standard, pesticide reduction, exposures to heat stress, sustainable agriculture, and food sovereignty. So welcome, Jeannie. We also have at the bottom of the screen, you'll see both Oscar and Natalia. Oscar is a senior staff with the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. He's originally from Guatemala and has worked in agriculture for many years as a harvester in everything from tomatoes to blueberries. He conducts workers' rights education on farms, participating in the Fair Food program. He even hosts a radio show and leads the community meetings and dealing with complaints of abuses out in the field. And we have Natalia, who is the national coordinator for the Student Farm Workers Alliance and has a background in youth and student organizing around sexual violence, gender equity, and community support. And she's going to be serving as an interpreter for Oscar. Then we have Valencia, who I hope she can at least hear us. Can you hear us?
I can now, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so Valencia likes to go by V, and she's a Miami native, a civil justice leader, and a modern day Fannie Lou Hammer. She is the criminal justice program manager for New Florida Majority and the founder of the Smile Trust that has helped thousands of people since Hurricane Irma. She's engaged on issues relating to emergency preparedness and climate gentrification, and was in fact the first person from Miami awarded the Soros Justice Fellowship for combating community violence. She's a returning citizen who also led in the passing of Amendment 4 to restore the voting rights of many Floridians. Welcome, Valencia. We also have, in the black and white photo there, we have Robin. Robin is a dear friend here also in Broward, where I'm located. She's an artist, the director of a cultural and nonprofit organization called the Upper Room Art Gallery. And she has spent decades in ministry, providing for creative economic development projects that focus on environmentalism and sustainability. Welcome, Robin. Then on the phone, we have Dr. Jennifer Taylor. Dr. Jennifer Taylor is an organic farmer, an advocate for underserving farming populations, small-scale farmers, and participatory capacity building strategies that support organic farming, the principles of organic agriculture to enable to make sure that we have healthy farms, environment, and communities. She, at Florida Agricultural Mechanical University, FAMU, she serves as an associate professor and coordinator of their small farm programs. And for those that don't know, last year, Nikki Freed, the Commissioner for Agriculture, named Dr. Jennifer Taylor as the 2019 Woman of the Year in Agriculture. So we're very honored to have her here. And lastly, but not least, we have Mayra Cruz. Mayra is the Climate Resilient Program Manager for Catalyst Miami, where she manages programs that are providing training on social justice and community organizing on issues related to climate change and affordable housing, as well as support initiatives related to clean energy and disaster resiliency through the Miami Climate Alliance. So again, I welcome all of our panelists, and what we're going to do next, we're going to turn our attention to them for a 5-minute overview of the people that they're helping, the issues that they're facing, either the current pandemic or the anti-climate crisis, and address those needs. And then afterwards, we'll engage in dialogue with them and answer questions. So, so I'm going to turn first to Jeannie, who's on the phone. And Jeannie, can you hear us?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to be on this event, and thank you for organizing this and focusing on local communities, because too often local communities are overlooked, and I think this is really timely. So I want to wish everybody a happy 50th Earth Day anniversary. And I think it's really interesting that we should be in this time right now with this coronavirus crisis, this pandemic, as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. I think one of the things that this pandemic has pointed out is how crucial and important our food supply is. We take it for granted all the time because we're just so used to being able to go to the grocery store and buy what we need. And we have an abundance of food in this country that we just take for granted and don't think about where it comes from or how it gets to our tables. And it's so interesting right now that for decades and decades, farm workers, the people that harvest the food that gets to our table have been called the invisible workers. And all of a sudden, now they are the essential workers. Well, you know, they've been essential workers all along. Now that we're just recognizing it now, it's very ironic, but it's also really good that we have this eye-opening moment for people to recognize that. So just briefly, the Farm Worker Association of Florida is an organization that's been around for 36 years. We have 5 offices in the state of Florida. Florida is a big state, and there's all different kinds of crops in the state, everything from ornamental plants, which people might not think of as agriculture, to ferns. If you see the top picture in the top with the woman in the red hat, she's harvesting ferns. Again, that's something you don't even think about, but they're in all of our flower arrangements when you go to the store. And you can see farm workers in nurseries, in citrus, in herbs, and all kinds of vegetables and fruits. These are the essential people. They are the first line on the food chain that gets the food to our grocery stores. If it weren't for farm workers, we wouldn't have food to eat. At the same time, farm workers are often, right now, expendable workers. The majority of farm workers in Florida are undocumented, and as such, we have this big stimulus plan, and we're giving money out to local small businesses, and we're giving money to help people with unemployment during this crisis. And yet farm workers, especially if they're undocumented, are unqualified for all of these programs, all these stimulus programs. So at this critical time in this pandemic, when we're seeing farm workers as essential workers, we're also not valuing their work enough to give them the pay and the protections that they need. Farm workers do some of the very most important work in our country. I can't stress that enough. They are feeding our entire country, and yet they have some of the worst housing conditions, the worst pay, the worst working conditions. They're exposed to toxic pesticides and fertilizers in agriculture that can have short and long-term consequences for their health. They're exposed to heat and often don't get training or protections for heat. Sometimes they don't even have hand washing water or drinking water in the fields. How can we treat people that are doing some of the most important work feeding us in such an unjust way? Just quickly, it's really important to understand the history of farm work. The first farm workers in the United States were enslaved people from Africa. And we need to see that connection, because there is a direct line from the horrors of slavery in the Southeast to farm workers today. And many farm workers today live in a kind of indentured servitude or kind of a modern day slavery. So these are some of the real conditions that farm workers work in. I'm going to talk briefly about health and safety. So the Farm Worker Association has been working on pesticide policy, but also empowering farm workers to protect themselves and to know their rights and to fight for their rights against pesticide exposure. In more recent years, we've done research studies on heat stress, because with climate change, we're finding that heat stress is an increasing problem. So we're now doing trainings around heat stress and doing research studies and trying to get statewide legislation for heat protections and national legislation for heat regulations for farm workers, outdoor workers.
Jeannie, you have 1 more minute. Sorry.
Yep. But the point, what's important to understand is this moment is showing up what we've been trying to say for years, that there's something fundamentally, institutionally, systemically wrong with our entire agricultural system, because our entire agricultural system is based on exploitation of labor and exploitation of our planet. We're using chemical pesticides and fertilizers on land, which makes the soil less able to sequester carbon. our system of agriculture is contributing to climate change. It's one of the major contributors to climate change, and yet it has the greatest potential for justice for farm workers and to resolve climate change, to help mitigate climate change on a massive scale. And I just want to say that one of the things that the Farm Workers Association is doing is saying that we can't just do little fixes in our system. We have to do big systemic change. And one of the things that we're doing is community gardens. You can see pictures on the bottom there of our community gardens, where our community gardens are places where we teach workers their rights, and we develop agroecological principles, and we fight for food sovereignty. And I'm happy to talk more about those things later on, but that's the direction our organization is going in. And si se puede, justice for farm workers. Thank you.
Sounds good. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to turn it to, yeah, you guys can hear me. I'd like to turn it to Oscar and Natalia. I know that they're going to, Oscar, ¿tú hablas español? ¿Hablas
Sí,
inglés? Ok,
un poquito.
lo dejo allá para que ustedes empiecen. Tienen 5 minutos para darnos una introducción.
Muy bien. Muy bien. Muchísimas gracias por la oportunidad que nos dan de poder presentar un poquito de nuestro trabajo aquí con todos ustedes.
Well, thank you so much for everybody being here today, and for also giving us a chance to talk a little bit about the work that we do here today.
Pues la coalición, como muchos conocen, como la organización que ha estado al frente de los trabajadores aquí en el suroeste de la Florida, aquí en Immokalee, trabajando desde lo que es mejorar los salarios, las condiciones de los trabajadores, empoderar a los trabajadores acerca de cómo defenderse en el lugar de trabajo, hasta educar a todos los trabajadores en cuanto a los temas que están sucediendo, como es el COVID-19. Estábamos básicamente trabajando con ellos para dejarles saber sobre cómo prevenir los contagios.
And so the coalition is here in a small town in Immokalee in Southwest Florida, for those of you that have never been here. And what we do is we work, we're built up of farm workers, and we work to have equal pay for farm workers, as well as teaching their rights. The latest is that we do education sessions with farm workers, and we go out into the fields, and we start to teach them about what their rights are, and also along with what currently, right? So we're trying to teach about COVID-19 and what's happening with that, and giving them updates that some places might not be translating, and trying to give them as much information as we can.
Y lo hacemos con nuestros propios recursos que tenemos, como nuestra comunidad es multibilingüe. Hablamos desde idiomas que son de Guatemala o de México hasta el criol que la gente de Haití lo habla, y hemos estado haciendo mucho de lo que es el trabajo de educación popular. Y en cuanto a este tema que estamos, este tiempo que está tan difícil para todos, también seguimos apoyando a la comunidad para dejarles saber sobre qué hacer y cómo trabajar para evitar los problemas.
And so we also work a lot with a multilingual community. So we have a lot of folks here that speak indigenous languages from Mexico and Guatemala, along with Haitian Creole. And so a lot of our work is translated into at minimum of 3 different languages a lot of the times. And so we have since transitioned that work into what is COVID-19 information, and trying to keep people educated. Previously, we were using a lot of popular education, so not just wording, but also a lot of pictures and different things so people could get the image. And we have since transitioned that into COVID-19 information.
Y trabajamos desde ese tema, y también trabajamos cómo podemos empoderar a los trabajadores en el lugar de trabajo. Tenemos el programa por comida justa ya implementando por 9 años en las compañías, en donde hacemos las educaciones de trabajador a trabajador. Al mismo tiempo estamos trabajando en lo que es la campaña por comida justa, que ahorita pues ha tenido una pausa pero sabemos que nuestras miras hacia las corporaciones van a seguir ahí presentes y vamos a seguir luchando junto con la comunidad.
And so a lot of the work that we do is just for justice for farm workers. We have the Fair Food Program, which is a program implemented by farm workers for farm workers to ensure safety and respect in the fields. And so because of COVID, we have kind of put a pause on that, and we're working really diligently within our community. But putting a pause on it doesn't mean that we have stopped it. And we will continue on to fight for the Fair Food Program because it's what we need here.
Yep.
Yeah, one more minute,
Great.
Natalia.
Great. Pues básicamente una de las cosas que venimos trabajando bastante con la comunidad es informar a ellos sobre los peligros que existen ahora, y lo hacemos mediante la radio, lo hacemos yendo a repartir volantes, a pegar volantes en cerca de las viviendas donde está la gente, y también estamos apoyando a ellos para llevarles mascarillas, proveerles toda la información necesaria, y eso es bastante esencial en una comunidad como Immokalee, en la cual nuestras autoridades no le han puesto la atención, a pesar de que es una comunidad que cosecha los vegetales que todavía se están consumiendo a nivel nacional.
And so we've shifted our work. We have a local radio station here that we use to communicate any new alerts, new emergency things happening. And we have also been distributing information out in the community, such as flyering. So we put out 3 different languages wherever we go. We put it around where people live, where people are working, where people are getting picked up to go to work. We are working on distributing masks in the community. We have just really shifted our campaign work to be able to get as much information out there as we can right now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That was very, very inspirational what you both did. I'd like to turn now to Valencia. In Valencia, you should be unmuted, right? Are you able to? Okay, good. And I have what I did. I asked Valencia, if she wanted to share it. So what I just went on her Facebook page and saw a lot of photos, and what I really like is just all the smiling faces. So Valencia, go ahead. You have about 5 minutes to give us an introduction.
Sure. One, happy Earth Day, everybody. And thank y'all for having me. And I'm so excited to see faces. I think I probably worked with almost everybody on this panel. And for the dear doctor, I haven't worked with her, but I attended Florida A&M University too. And I was in the school of agriculture. So I'm grateful to see the work and the impact happening. I'm Valencia Gunder, B, she, her pronouns, the co-director of the Smile Trust, formerly known as Make the Homeless Smile. We are an organization that works in mainly urban communities to combat food safety, homelessness, and food scarcity, especially in food deserts or unsheltered populations. During these COVID times, the work that we've been doing, of course, communities that are already facing a lot of social ills. We all know that climate change and natural disasters and man-made disasters and pandemics multiplies the threat. And we know if we were already having problems with, like you all was talking about, the heat, access to food, fair pay, housing, those things have increased. And what we're seeing is capitalism doing what capitalism does, and people are not having what they need to survive through these times. So some of the work that we've been expanding on through our Community Emergency Operations Center, which is our emergency disaster relief program, we usually activate and we respond to communities directly, and we do it rapidly. So we've been working with Dr. Armin Henderson in Miami, Florida, and he's been leading a team out every Friday, and he's been testing unsheltered folks for COVID in the Miami-Dade area. He and the team also we take out our hot showers, clothes, food, and we've been giving them tents so they could shelter in place in that capacity. We also have been, we launched our mutual aid fund where we have been giving out food stipends to families or individuals in need. We have extended our efforts to those who are undocumented and created a safety net for them to reach out for resources because we know and understand the level of anxiety that's happening during these times. It's a false narrative sometimes that America gives. Like we have this social service safety net that not everybody has. I always use this quote, America is a first world country that creates second class citizens that have to live in third world situations. Right here in this, on this lands of America, due to colonization, oppression, racism, and capitalism, we deal with these issues all the time. We have individuals like farm workers, undocumented folks, incarcerated folks, underserved populations, Black and Brown communities, from language justice to trans and non-gender conforming folks, right? There's a large plethora of people who are being oppressed in these times, and our programming at the Smile Trust is to serve those populations very specifically. We look for those individuals to, one, pull our resources together and get those resources directly to community. We remove a lot of the red tape. We try to make sure that we do not treat people how the state treats them. We do not process our work through a capitalistic lens. We also are very conscious about in what way we help people. And when I say that, the tone we use when we talk to them, the language in our application process, how many questions in that process, making sure the wording is understanding. And we have not yet, because we don't have the capacity to do the translation, but we have volunteers who speak different languages who are willing to call different families and talk through these applications with them. And we prioritize these families to make sure that they have what they need. We do not look at it like this is big government. We are not the government. We don't function like the government. We don't get any of our funding or resources from the government. We actually get our resources within ourselves. So a lot of our funding and resources come from community, and we resource our community. That's why we use the terminology solidarity and not charity. It's not charity. You give when you can, and we give when we can. And that has been an amazing trend that we've been focusing on. Just in this last 2 weeks, we've been able to serve over 100 families with these stipends. They're not the most money, but it's something to help, pad that refrigerator in these times. Also, we've, like I told you, the outreach we've been doing, and then now we're going to start going into mobile home parks and different apartment complexes and doing food drops. Usually food drops are not our style. If y'all see the pictures, we usually like to set up buffet style and let the people walk through, but we understand that we're in the middle of a global pandemic and that's not the best way to do things. So we've been, training our volunteers on how to be safe. So making sure they have PPE, so our volunteers are fully covered, masks, gowns, the whole shebang. And then also we pre-package the food before we go out and all of the resources. So it's just a pass and go. We try to humanize our experience as much as possible during these times, right? So we try to make sure we're checking in. We've been doing phone bank, calling all the families that we serve, all of our senior citizens. We have a list of over 6,000 senior citizens between Miami-Dade County and Atlanta. Our organization serves 2 cities also.
Yeah. Valencia, we're going to need to wrap up. We're going to have more opportunities because I know the things that you do are just phenomenal.
I got you.
In that.
So when we when we jump back in, I'll have some information on how you all can volunteer and be a part of all of this great work that's happening. Thank you all so much for having me.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I'm going to turn attention now to Mayra Cruz with Catalyst Miami. I don't know, Mayra, you don't have any slides or anything that you wanted to show, right? Yes, so we'll just hear from you in the next 5 minutes.
No problem. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and happy Earth Day once again. It's definitely not how I envisioned Earth Day happening this year. Usually it's a moment to go outside and to enjoy the fresh air and all of that, which we still can do, but of course now we have social distancing happening. But yeah, I just want to give you more information about the organization I work for, Catalyst, and how our work has shifted and what we're doing now in these difficult times for a lot of our people that we serve. So Catalyst Miami is a nonprofit. We have been around for over 20 years. We primarily serve Miami-Dade County, and we really aim to build the health and wealth of all the people that we serve. And primarily that ends up being low and middle wealth individuals and families throughout the county. So we provide financial services. So for example, right now, tax season is still happening, even though, you know, we have COVID happening as well. But that's something that we provide. We also help with budgeting and help with, you know, building up your credit. We really want to build financial literacy within our clients and to make sure that they're not falling into like predatory like loaning that happens, like payday loans and all that stuff, which we know right now is something that people might be turning to if they don't have access to the financial means that they need to survive at this moment. We also do a lot of work around healthcare, so providing we have health and wellness coaches that help you navigate like how to access Medicare and Medicaid and ACA, which are also things right now that are super important that we want people to have access for. And lastly, we also do leadership and advocacy training. We have a policy and engagement team where we do programs like CLEAR, which is our climate leadership training program, where we talk about climate resilience and how that impacts you and your family. What can you do about that? And then we also have a program called HEAL, which is our affordable housing leadership training program. And we all know that affordable housing is one of the biggest issues here that we have in South Florida. We've polled people about this, and affordable housing is always the top issue or one of the top 3 issues where they live. So given all of that, we're definitely seeing a lot of these impacts playing out now during COVID. We have a hotline that we've set up, and I'll make sure to send this information to the IANA so that everyone else can access it as well. But we have people that are calling in that are concerned about housing, about paying their rent. Even though we have a moratorium now on evictions, people are still worried about what happens after this moratorium ends. Do we still need to pay our rent? So people have a lot of questions around that, questions about how to access these relief programs. Why haven't they received their $1,200 check? How do I navigate the unemployment website? Those are all things that are popping up now. And we definitely have community members that are, you know, furloughed or losing jobs, or have other family members that are going through those scenarios and those situations. So for us, you know, in a way, yes, like our work has shifted, but also this is the work that we've been doing for many, many years now. We know that it's important for people to have enough savings in their bank account to endure any sort of shock or stress that might come up, whether it is man-made, whether it is a hurricane. And I'll just note that we are nearing the start of hurricane season, so that is something that we're also thinking about, many of us. What does sheltering in place look like when we have to do social distancing? So those are things that we are concerned about, and starting to have conversations around with a lot of other groups to figure out what can we do, what can we ensure, how can we set up like food supplies so that it's done in a safe manner, people can access that. What is communication going to look like? Because we know it's going to be super crucial in letting our communities know if there are changes to how we do disaster preparedness, what are those, so that they're ready and prepared. And in terms of like our policy and advocacy work, we're just doing a whole lot of that now, really leaning into that work. There's so many demand letters going around now, a lot of petitions, going to Governor DeSantis, going to FPL. There's like a statewide petition to put a moratorium on utility shutoffs. There's a local one circulating as well, asking for further assistance for our people. I think for us, you know, it's already been said before, but we already knew that a lot of these systems that are in place have been failing our most vulnerable. That's something that we've been talking about for ages. But I think the opportunity that COVID presents is that we've been seeing some wins happen, some things that are happening that we wouldn't have imagined before. And I think it's really important to seize that moment and to connect the dots for people. Climate change and coronavirus have a lot of similarities. The people that are feeling the most impacts are the same ones that have been feeling the impacts of climate change already. So I think it's really important to uplift that in the work and not forget that, and to not be fooled by the fact that, you know, yes, our emissions are going down, but as soon as these economies open up again, we know that's all going to go away completely. So what do we do to open up in a way that's more resilient and in a way that is safe for all of our communities? Yeah. And I'll leave it at that.
Mayra, thank you so much for all the inspiring work that you're all doing. I'd like to turn next to my good friend, Sister Robin Haynes Merrill in Fort Lauderdale, and share some of the amazing initiatives that she's been doing to help local farmers.
Well, blessed and wonderful 50th anniversary of Earth Day to everyone. It's an honor, and I'm happy to be here. I am basically a recycler, and so about 2 weeks ago when I saw on social media these huge mounds of green and yellow squash being dumped down in Homestead at Florida City, I shared the photo. It was really unbelievable, inconceivable. I had to keep zooming in on the photo to figure out what is that. It's like food, great food, and it was just being dumped. So I shared the photo, which I saw shared by someone else, and then I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna go down, and I know exactly where it is, so I wasn't too afraid of not knowing where I was going. I'm gonna go down and just fill up my car and give it away. So that's how it started. And I learned real quick that, you know, perishables and in your car when it's not refrigerated, and then trying to figure out how to do things really fast as far as distribution. So all of that has been done just via social media. So where we're at now is I run a small nonprofit and had received an unexpected donation, and so just said, well, next step, I want to buy from the farmers, because I was learning about these $10 boxes that were being given to the public from farm distribution centers in South Florida that normally don't open to the public. But because they've lost their orders of cruise ships, theme parks, school boards, and the restaurants that have closed. So, you know, these are perishables, they're fresh. So farmers have been putting together like these $10 boxes and opening it to the public. So I just decided to use some of the funds we had available, load up my SUV. It costs roughly $400 per time that I do it. And so I'm in Broward County, and now I go up to Palm Beach County to Mecca Farms and just fill up my vehicle. I've been able to do it about 3 times a week. And then I go to a spot, and we're focused on the restaurant workers in the area that have lost their jobs in the service industry. So it's not just restaurants though, but you know, it trickles out. In the entertainment industry, you have people who were housekeepers or you know, the janitors. It's an enormous amount of people in the whole hotel and restaurant industry that have lost their jobs. So this is really just friends helping friends. It's not like a soup kitchen, although for the homeless aspect for Fort Lauderdale, we do give food to Food Not Bombs, and they are able to cook it and also give it out to the homeless in the area. But it's really hard for people who are very, very hard workers to accept food. And that's why we've had to kind of massage this. It's only been 2 weeks. And we have to tell people, because a lot of people will refuse the food and they'll say, like, you know, leave it to someone who's, you know, less fortunate than I. And my concept is this is God's good stuff. You know, this is free from God. You know, you take it, this is for you. And once we can break through that mentality of people thinking I'm a charity case, it's like, no, I'm recycling. I'm recycling the money. I'm buying, you know, boxes of food from the farmers, which is helping them, and then I'm giving it away to you, and you're going to recycle it with your power and your goodness, and you're going to go out and help, you know, the people you know who need help. So I like to keep focusing on recycling, and it's recycling one thing, money, and then farmers, and then food, and then your energy, and then your goodness, which is going to get passed on to someone else. And so that's kind of the framework of what we got going on. I have no idea how long it's going to go on, but I'm ready, willing, and able, you know, to just keep fundraising and keep doing it. And I'm sure it's going to change, because once the food stops, as far as, you know, we're reaching the end of our peak season with Florida farming, it'll change as far as what we're able to buy and distribute, but we're ready for that too. It might move from fresh produce and fruits to maybe we're going to design meal kits. We're never going to be like a soup kitchen kind of a thing. It's going to be, you know, what we can do, what we can handle, because it's small. And we're trying to empower other people. And many people have come to me and asked, how did you do this? How'd you do that? And so we're just empowering other groups and encouraging them and helping them to go and do it in other areas by sharing information. And for me, especially, I kind of look at it as a mobile monastery. I don't say that out loud because I don't want anybody to get freaked out. But,
Robin,
you know,
you're doing amazing, really amazing work.
Oh,
and
thank you.
appreciate. Yeah. I'm going to turn up. We have Dr. Jennifer Taylor on the line. Dr. Jennifer, Taylor, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear. Can you
Okay.
hear me? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, we hear
Thank
you good.
you.
If you could speak it just a little louder. You don't have a webcam, right?
I don't.
Okay, not a problem. Yeah, you got us for 5 minutes. If you could give us an introduction to the communities that you're serving, and especially how they're affected during these times, and take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. It's such an honor to participate with you all today on this wonderful event and celebration, and that we still can find a way to celebrate Earth Day and still find a way in these times to examine what we're doing and examine the benefits and be helpful to each other. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate. So as Deanna stated, I am a certified organic farmer myself. We grow organic vegetables and fruit and cover crops using organic farming system strategies and supporting the iPhone principles of organic agriculture from my farm. We also have education and training opportunities that we provide to the community, to farmers and others interested in the benefits of organic agriculture. At Florida A&M University, I am coordinator of small farm programs, associate professor there at the university, and I developed our statewide small farm program, which is an active participatory capacity building program that identifies the needs and works together to provide, develop solutions for communities and individuals, and works to assist and equip underserved farming populations, your indigenous farmers, your minority farmers, your small-scale farmers and their families, your farm workers and their families. And we're working towards the movement of their own sustainable development, how they see and envision their own improving their own quality of life. So we provide participatory education, hands-on training, technical assistance, primarily in the areas of organic farming systems, organic agriculture, agroecology, regenerative organic agricultural systems and practices. Also in alternative market development and implementation, in food sovereignty, and what we call organic sustainable living. We're always working to enhance the well-being and quality of life of the underserved farming populations, or farming populations at large, and improve their relationship and provide linkages and support to how they work in the communities. And we're always at the fundamental stage, we're using the principles of organic agriculture as the guideline. Those principles point out the health of individuals is a critical thing. The health of the community, the health of the farm is critical to improving the farm health, to improving the environment, and improving the health of people, local, global communities. That health is the wholeness and integrity of the living system, and that's where we are. We're in living systems with each other. So that's important to maintain the well-being and build resilience and regeneration components, so to speak, building blocks within building the health of the community. And we see the role of organic agriculture, the role of the organic farmer, as being essential to being good stewards of not only their farm, but of the farm environment, their local community environment, and working to sustain and enhance the health of the ecosystem, and being concerned to improve the well-being and fairness with not only amongst their families and how they build relationships, but with the farm workers that are working on their farm and in the community.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I thought I was getting a question there. So how we're working. Hello?
Yeah, you have one more minute.
Okay, great. So how we're working in the communities is that we are providing those farmers that are willing to participate because they're concerned with their own well-being and their own health to participate and continue to provide their healthy, organically grown produce. We're enabling them to do so by using the requirements, the social distancing requirements. And so they are having their customers stand at least 6 feet apart in gloved hands and using masks and no touching of the produce or the value added items. And the farmers have been experiencing a resurgence of interest from the customers, from the local communities in their produce. A lot of times the grocery stores have empty shelves of certain items, but the farmers have these items, and so they are again being recognized as a good food resource in the community. And we are happy to have that distinction in this really challenging time of being essential providers, service providers. But again, we knew it all the time, but it is good to have that distinction to be able to assist and enable the communities to build healthy communities and healthy environments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was great. And again, I know there's so much more you could share, and you're an amazing resource, especially at these times when our small local farms need this kind of help the most. What I'd like to do next is, over the next few minutes, is I want to first turn to our panelists ourselves and ask them if they have questions among themselves about the things that you guys are seeing to each other, hearing each other. So wonder if any of you have a question that you'd like to start with. Putting you all on the spot.
Yeah, I guess I kind of have a question for Robin, Sister Robin. Thank you so much for being able to recycle and save that food, because that was one of our concerns too. We've seen that happening in various parts of the state, And we also have been trying to salvage some of that food, because it's ironic that the farm workers who harvest the food don't have enough food to eat themselves. So do you know if there's any other efforts? Are others picking up the ball and also trying to save some of that food? Because we have an office in Homestead, Florida City, and we saw acres and acres and acres of food being wasted. I think the state has kind of got their act together now a little bit more, and the growers, to try and save some of that, but I understand that there's still a lot that's going to waste. Has there been any other efforts in your area where other groups have kind of picked up the ball and tried to help salvage some of that food as well? So.
Yeah, I wouldn't say groups, but individuals. Like last night, I came across a woman who saw one of the, again, just a photo I shared from somebody else on social media of these gorgeous golden wax beans that were out in the field, and the farmer just said, come and get them, because, you know, he let go of all of his workers and such. So he is a currently unemployed restaurant worker. And unfortunately, the other people she knows that are able-bodied simply don't have the money for the gas to go down. So I was able, through the fundraiser, I'm just hand her cash. And I know that made her cry and she didn't want to take it, but it's like, here's money and go employ the other people, and you are now, you know, deputized. You're now our partners in doing this, and go pick those fields. So that's what she's doing today. And I hope when they, you know, and then this week that we could just hand money for people for gas and go get it. And then those folks are redistributing it. Some of them are blanching the, at least these are wax beans. So there doesn't seem to be a good information network system yet regarding where fields are, but that's what we're trying to do via social media. Every time somebody finds a field, especially in the Homestead area, because it really is more down there, from what I'm hearing, of things that are just being left. And we're just trying to share it out and then empower people, people who are strong enough, because as she said, she has a new respect for farm workers. The heat, the bending over, it's an enormous amount of adrenaline if you're not accustomed to doing that work. So these restaurant workers that are unemployed and physically capable, I simply, through our organization, is trying to raise money. And then there's no problem getting it distributed once we get the food.
That's good. Among the panelists, do you have another question? Because if not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask one question, and then I'm going to turn to the audience, who is able to use the questions tab panel to put in questions, and I will ask them. But do you guys have another question among yourselves before I ask my question?
Can I make one quick comment?
Of course.
I just want to say thank you for that work. I think it's really interesting because a lot of times the people in the food system and the food chain have been siloed, like the restaurant workers do their restaurant work, and the truck drivers do their work, and the farm workers do their work. And it's really interesting now, and it's really an opportunity now for people in the food system to see those interconnections. I think growers are valuing their farm workers more. I mean, they might not be giving them the protections that they really should be, but they're seeing the, you know, how much value they are. And then I think, like you mentioned, the restaurant workers seeing how hard it is to harvest the food. I think one thing that's happening with this is that we're really seeing our interconnectedness more than ever. And I think that that's one we can call good thing out of this. That's one thing that is happening that I think is important.
That's good. Let me ask my question, and then I'm going to turn to the audience and see some of the things they're asking. And I'm going to ask Valencia first, if she doesn't mind, to see if she can respond to this question. You know, as an environmental organization, you know, Sierra Club has been around for over 125 years. And there are times in our work that I hear some say that, you know, to basically stay in our lane, to focus on just, you know, environmental stuff, that social justice issues have nothing to do with environmental advocacy. So what words of wisdom would you like to share to convey to those that might be listening to this webinar about the connections between these issues?
Well, Audre Lorde has this this quote that says, I don't have a single issue life, so I don't have a single issue fight, or something of that nature. I'll get the correct one and send it to you. And that's how I feel about this. For those who don't know, it would be no environmental advocacy if it was not for social justice. The whole EJ movement was because Black communities was getting waste and things put into their communities. As somebody said on the panel before, that the whole thing around farm workers and oppression around those environmental issues started way back in slavery in the United States. So it's no social justice. I mean, it's no environmental advocacy without social justice. It's surprising. That's the first time I ever heard the separation of the two, and I don't even understand the ideology of the separation. Like, it is of one thing. But environmental advocacy has to align with social justice, because who are you advocating for? What is the advocacy for? What are you pushing if you're not responding to people, to human beings? The whole thing around social justice, environmental justice, climate justice, and environmental advocacy was to humanize this thing around climate change, because it was a very science, fact, data, numbers specific thing, right? The whole thing around the advocacy piece of social justice was to humanize it, let them know that it is humans causing it, one, and it is humans who will have to fix it. We will have to change human behavior to fix it. So it's one and the same. It's no way you can have environmental advocacy without it being tied to social justice. It must be, and it always should be. And I don't know, I didn't know people was walking around the earth saying that people should stay in their lane, but it ain't no lane to stay in when it's only one.
That's a good point. I'd like to turn to Oscar, and I can ask him the question in Spanish since I speak Spanish, and then Natalia, if you could translate what he says. Oscar, te voy a hacer la misma pregunta. Hay a veces personas que no, que por ejemplo, que piensan que las cuestiones ambientales no tienen que ver nada con las cosas sociales. ¿Tú tienes algunas palabras de sabiduría que puedas compartir de cómo se conectan los problemas sociales con los ambientales?
Sí, pues básicamente es bastante interesante cuando la gente habla sobre cambio climático, y en mi experiencia, pues también es bastante interesante para mí cuando la gente que no está afectada directamente está hablando sobre este tema.
And so it cut out a little bit, so I'm hoping I caught everything. Typically the people that are making these comments and talking about how these two things shouldn't go together are people that either aren't affected by, like, deeply affected by these climate changes, or people that have nothing to do with the people fighting for the people's rights for climate changes.
Y más que nada cuando yo veo sobre condiciones de trabajo, cuando yo veo sobre el cambio climático, la gente, los trabajadores directamente están viviendo las consecuencias de las decisiones que toman las corporaciones, en la cual es importante que los mismos trabajadores, como lo hemos hecho nosotros como organización, hemos salido nosotros a hablar de nuestras condiciones y queremos también que se nos tome en cuenta en más lugares en la cual podemos hablar directamente sobre cómo está afectándonos a nosotros directamente el cambio climático.
Okay. Natalia, were you able to hear it? I can't hear you, Natalia.
And so,
Okay. Okay, now I hear you.
okay, great. And so what I've seen from farm workers in the field and what I've seen from their living and their working conditions is that a lot of the times these climate changes caused by corporations are directly affecting farm workers. They are directly the ones being most affected by what's happening with climate change. And so for people to ignore that and for people to not recognize that this is the population that is directly being impacted by that and telling us to not try to make a change because of that is just, I wasn't able to catch the end of that, but it's just messed up.
Gracias, Natalia. Mara, did you wanted to say anything real quick on that? If not, I'm going to move into some of the questions that are coming in from our attendees.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Valencia and Oscar said were right on. They hit the nail on that. I think the only thing I'd say is just that I think people that might think that social justice and environmental justice aren't linked don't recognize their privilege and recognize that they might have access to things that others don't. And so that's why they don't see, they might be blind to the fact that, climate change impacts certain populations disproportionately. So I think that's probably where that sentiment might be coming from. And unfortunately, those people do exist out there. But I think for those people, and just for everyone, it's, just like what Oscar was saying, for example, like we have to humanize these issues and we have to connect them back to people and not just use numbers, not just talk about, while like trees and like the environment's really important. When we humanize the issue, it's a lot harder to ignore the people that are, raising their arms about this and are showing that they're being impacted. So I think like what we're doing now today is a really good way of having that conversation.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to turning now to try to see a few questions that are coming in. We have, until 1:30, and one of the things we're going to do, get to back, is to figure out ways to support you. But I want to go and turning attention to any questions that are coming in. So give me a moment to just kind of look through that real quick. I have somebody asked, hold on, give me 1 second to, let's see, I had a question here. Oh, okay. Somebody mentioned something about an essential workers Bill of Rights that have been proposed by Senator Warren. Are any of you familiar with that bill?
This is Jeannie. Yes, I've heard about it. I don't know a whole lot of the details about it yet, but we're happy that somebody's recognizing that, because one of the things that we're advocating for is that undocumented workers be included in the Bill of Rights for essential workers, because as I mentioned before, undocumented workers are not covered right now. We're also asking for that at a statewide level. There's a petition that we can share the link for, that we're asking the governor to open up unemployment insurance and other kinds of assistance. I think that bill opens up food stamps and Medicaid, at least on a temporary basis, for undocumented workers. That's one of the big issues. In the news, you hear that 22 million people have applied for unemployment, which sounds like just gigantic. But that doesn't include the millions of undocumented people in this country that haven't applied for unemployment because they can't. And not only are we concerned about like what's going to happen with the virus, are we at the peak, is it going to resurge again, but also what's going to happen to undocumented workers, because they don't have safety net programs for them, at least not at the government level. It's going to be all up to nonprofits, and nonprofits don't have enough money or ability or capability to deal with the huge issues that are going to be affecting undocumented workers. And so it's a really big issue for us. And we are with partners nationally. We're working with the Rural Coalition on a national level and Farm Worker Justice and other national organizations to influence federal policy.
Yeah. You were cut off a little bit. Somebody asked a question who was speaking, just to let you know, that was Jeannie, Economos with the Farm Workers Association. I have a question here that somebody asked. Give me, go to it real quick. Hold on, I had it and I just lost it a moment ago. Give me a second to find it. It was a question related to, why haven't all these empty hotels being able to provide temporary housing for homeless? I don't know, somebody has a...
I'll answer.
Yeah, sure, Robin.
Because they had to furlough their workers.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to stay in one of the very few hotels that are open on the beach in Fort Lauderdale because of some mold issues in my place. And it was really hard to find a hotel that's open. And unfortunately, all these major chains have had to furlough their workers. So how are they going to let people in when there's nobody to oversee the facilities? That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
I can add to that also. I've seen other states who their government has been paying the hotels to house unsheltered folks, and then therefore the workers or the folks, I hate to say the word workers, but the individuals who do the hospitality can come back to work with the proper PPE. And honestly, the state of Florida is just slow rolling. Our government is not responding properly. It is ways that we can use these empty facilities to house unsheltered folks, but it takes money, and apparently our state doesn't want to spend it. So capitalism is why they're not using the hotels.
Yeah. Valencia, I have a question that somebody asked. Somebody wanted to know what your shirt says.
Oh,
What is on your shirt? Is that Fannie Lou?
Yes.
Fannie Lou. Yes,
Fannie Lou Hamer. Yes, I wore her shirt today because they do call me modern day Fannie Lou, but Fannie Lou Hamer was more than just a social justice activist. She actually owned over 600 acres of land. She was really in touch with sharecroppers and farm workers, and she did a lot of food security work in the Deep South. So I know her lens probably was different, but she did help us with a lot of infrastructure to the work we do today. So I thought that I would pay homage to the beautiful Fannie Lou Hamer.
Okay, great. I have give me a moment to try to get the questions. There's something about the box in this thing that I have to scroll to get to the question. Okay, a question here. Let me just read that. There is a lot of talk about getting back to normal once social distancing guidelines are loosened up. Do you believe that can be used as a bit of a reset? And if so, what steps should we take as a society to refocus on the environment and the different groups that it affects? So why don't I ask, let's see who, Mayra, if you wanna, I think I lost Valencia. Oh, there is Valencia again. I don't know if you would like to try to answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question and something that we're definitely talking to our partners about. We actually have a call on Friday with some of different like FIU and a couple of other partners that are working on this climate and health initiative, because for hospitals, for example, you don't they don't have like the proper PPE for us to even start opening it back up again. So there's like something really basic as that we need to figure out. But I think we should be asking, you know, like Mayor Jimenez and like our other local officials, wherever you're at, having these conversations around how do we come back in a way that's stronger and more resilient. Whenever there's like a hurricane and there's an opportunity to rebuild, I think we should be taking that exact same approach with this situation. If we're opening up back businesses again, how do we ensure that that are now the people that we deem essential workers, how do we make sure that they're paid as essential workers and not what they're getting paid before? Like, how can we work with our utilities to make sure that in the future we're not waiting on them to do the right thing and just have something in place so that, yes, like there's a moratorium, there's an emergency or something is, there's something happening in our state. How do we ensure that in the future, like we have hurricane season coming up, can we have the same sorts of demands in place that we've had before where, you know, we don't have evictions anymore, we're not having utility shutoffs? Like, what are the basic things we can ask for right now moving forward to ensure that if there is any sort of other emergency that comes up, which it will, especially here in Florida, so that we have that infrastructure in place. I definitely don't have all the answers, but I think it's definitely worth having those conversations with other groups and ensuring that as our different mayors and DeSantis especially is putting these plans together, that we're there and asking these hard questions of them too.
Yeah, I agree. This is Jennifer.
Yeah, Jennifer.
Yeah, I agree with what's being said. I also think that it's really important for us to re-examine our food system and how it has worked in the past and where we see now and we knew before that changes needed to take place. So I suggest not only the re-examination, but building in agroecology food systems, organic farming food systems, those systems that are responsible for building the healthy farm environment and providing healthy environments for our farm workers and our farm families and the local community at large, our global communities being impacted by the healthy benefits on the farms and the healthy benefits in the neighborhoods surrounding the farms. And looking at how we can support those types of systems that rely on the building of the healthy farm, the healthy soil, but also impact the health of the environment and of our well-being, our public, our local and global communities. I think that as essential food providers, it's necessary for us to look at how the food is being grown and support those strategies that benefit and build healthy communities.
Okay, thanks. I have a question here. I'm going to take one more question from one attendee, and then we're going to pivot a little bit to talk about ways that we can support you. A question that I'm having here is in Palm Beach County, a major producer, there's a major producing area in Florida. Farmers are trying to sell their land to developers in an area that they're in, which is next to the agricultural reserve that was meant to be protected by the county in the plan. Developers and farmers, you know, they're kind of working around it. So, and obviously the disadvantages are increased development, roads, water use, traffic, and decreased agricultural production, loss of jobs. Any idea for options to deal with this turning of farmland into development? And is this happening in any of the other Florida agricultural areas? Jennifer, I wonder if you might be able to answer that question, because I know that you hear a lot of stories on your end.
There is, and this opportunity that we've been given through this pandemic is a time of reflection and looking at and seeing how we can do things differently. I think that to propose in our communities and throughout our urban communities as well as our rural communities, healthy farming systems or healthy environmental conservation practice areas, however you want to word that, which would be providing the fundamentals of how the agriculture system is taking place, the health and benefits that it's providing to the community, and having those resources allocated to the local communities as well as the rural communities. That will take maybe a different way of looking at land use and different ways of looking at agricultural practices, and in the support of those practices that do not contaminate, and that do not cause contamination on the farm workers or on their local communities. And also in support of those practices, our backyard practices, that where we're using pesticides or herbicides in our backyard management, you know, but taking note of those practices as strategies that we don't want to engage in too, because they don't build healthy communities. But to have that kind of conversation taking place when we re-examine the land use and donate land, so to speak, for these kinds of broader conservation, agriculture, healthy land uses, healthy food production strategies. I think that would be really, really good. What do you think?
Yes.
Can I make one comment? I think this is a great opportunity for environmental groups. In question, one of your first questions was about silos between, you know, environmental groups not understanding or getting social and environmental justice. This is a key moment, because I would suggest to the environmental groups to not only talk about energy production and climate change, but to talk more and more about the impacts of agriculture, because as a single industry, agriculture is the single biggest industry that's causing climate change. If you take everything related to agriculture into consideration, this is a key moment. This coronavirus crisis is a key moment for us to bring environmental groups, labor, farm worker groups, social justice groups all together to address those problems, because agriculture really is key to helping to mitigate climate change. And we need those rural areas. So this is an opportunity for environmental groups and farm worker groups and others to come together and say, we have to protect those rural areas. We have to stop them from development, because that's what's causing all these problems, not just climate change, but exacerbating the spread of viruses like this. And this is an opportunity for us to work together, to bring social justice and environmental groups together to make significant change. I want to say one last thing. The founder of the Farm Worker Association was a farm worker himself, and he would always say, farm workers are just landless farmers. They're people that know how to farm, they just don't have land. So if we can put all of us together, if we can have land for people to grow our own food in communities, in community-based agriculture, then we can all be a part of saving our rural lands, holding back development, and protecting us for the next disaster.
That's good. I'm going to turn over to you guys in a moment, but I want to just share a little bit of something. A few months ago, Sierra Club had put together a workshop on regenerative agriculture. You know, realizing, you know, this is again the concept that regenerative agriculture has a lot to do with the health of the soils. The moment that our soils are gone, we can grow our food, right? And also when we lose our soils, we lose this ability to capture carbon, which is also an important way to make sure that carbon is not released to, you know, as emissions. And you know, and on that end, I want to you know, say just how important that aspect is, that we really change the way that that we farm, so that our soils not only, you know, we can grow back our soils and, you know, stop practices such as sugarcane burning that is negatively impacting some communities more than others. Again, bringing that social justice and environmental justice issues together. I want to thank you all. What I would like to do is use the last, I think we have about 10 more minutes or so, and I want to turn over to figure out ways that we can support the communities that you guys are helping, right? You know, what we call frontline communities, the people that are in the very front of being affected by both the pandemic and the larger, longer-term climate crisis issues. And I'm going to turn first to Jeannie. I know that she had sent me, and I'm going to try to put that on my screen here. She had shared a petition. Jeannie, the one that I'm looking at right now, in case you want to talk about what that is, it's from the United Farm Workers about lowering farm worker wages during COVID-19. If you want to explain what that petition is about.
Yes, so a few days ago, the Trump administration had, or Trump tweeted out that he was going to reduce wages for a class of workers called H-2A or guest workers. And these are workers that are brought over from other countries for a short period of time, like 6 months or 8 months to harvest crops in this country. And they get generally a higher wage than minimum wage. And Trump was saying that his solution to some of the crisis was to lower wages for the guest workers, which is really outrageous, because while we're calling farm workers essential workers, how can we even think about lowering their wages? So this was a petition, a national petition started by the United Farm Workers out of California on the West Coast, to the Trump administration to not lower farm worker wages. There's also another petition by the Food Chain Workers Alliance. I can send that link to you as well. And that is a petition with, yes, that's it, thank you. And that petition is calling on Congress to implement several different things in the new stimulus bill, which is being talked about, including making sure that undocumented workers are included in the stimulus package. So there's 5 or 6 different points in that petition. I won't go over them, people can read them. But that would be really great if people could sign on to that petition, because it's to protect all workers, especially workers in the food system, not just farm workers, but restaurant workers and warehouse workers in the food system as well. So thank you. Really encourage people to sign those petitions.
Yeah, good. I'd like to turn to Coalition Immokalee Workers. Natalia, I don't know if she's still on the line or not. I don't see her.
I had to turn off my camera, but I'm still here.
Okay. What I'm looking at right now, one of the petitions that you had shared with me, it's and I'm putting the links on the chat on the chat. It's change.org, protect farm workers during COVID. Governor DeSantis, do you want to share on that or something else?
Yes. Oscar, si quieres hablar un poquito del.
Ya. Pues básicamente es una petición que hemos lanzado pensando siempre en que trabajadores agrícolas no nos ven como trabajadores esenciales, pero en la cual nos han dejado a un lado de las protecciones que debieran de darnos nuestras autoridades de cómo prevenir este contagio. Y a pesar de que hemos hecho de diferentes maneras como cómo mostrar que la comunidad de Immokalee es vulnerable al COVID-19, el gobernador no lo toma como algo en serio en la cual se debe él enfocar en esta comunidad.
Yeah, and so we have started this campaign for farm workers because even though we are essential workers in this moment, we have never, ever been seen that way. And even currently, you know, we're still a very hidden population and people just don't see us, you know, we're kind of invisible. And so we created this campaign, which I would like to add is a hospital campaign for Immokalee, because we don't have a hospital. The closest hospital here is an hour away. And this petition is just to get that information out to the governor of Florida, who has not responded to us. But we just, if people don't know about what's happening here, how can we get help? How can we receive that? So that's essentially what this petition is trying to do.
Ya, y también conociendo un poco la comunidad, pues Immokalee es una comunidad mayormente inmigrante. Viven entre cada vivienda, entre cada traila, entre 10, 12 personas, y si hay algún contagio, es fácil para que se vaya a regar esta enfermedad. Y la razón por esta petición es para que puedan darnos un hospital temporal en esta comunidad para poder ayudar a la comunidad a que no se infecte de todo este problema. Entonces, por eso estamos pidiendo a las organizaciones, a la gente, a que pueda firmarlo, y es una manera, ¿verdad?, de poder apoyar esta campaña que es sumamente importante en este momento aquí en la comunidad de Immokalee.
Okay.
Right. And so for those that aren't too familiar with the community here in Immokalee, things here are very, very specific. So you have 10 to 12 farm workers that could be living in one trailer home, up to 2 to 3 families in one trailer home. And so everybody is just very, very crowded. And so once things start to spread here, they will be spreading very quickly. And again, we don't have a hospital here. We don't have any sort of medical care. And so that's what we're trying to bring awareness to. And so this petition is kind of doing that. It details out what's happening here, the situation, and why we need a field hospital. So there's one for individuals to sign on to as individuals. And then there's another one for organizations, universities, unions, different nonprofits to sign on to like back up and support that and say like, hey, we as an organization, which thankfully Sierra Club has, but to sign on and say, we support what's happening in Immokalee and we support their need for this field hospital.
Yeah.
We're getting to the 1:30 time frame, and I want to apologize, because I want to stay committed to the people that attended the webinar. What I would love to do is for all of our panelists to let me know how the community can support you. How can we support you as a hero that's helping these frontline communities? How can we help them directly? Whether it's going to Robin's street market and buying her produce, or some other way. Obviously, we encourage you all to visit their websites. So if you share, I'm going to make sure that I follow up by sending an email to everybody that registered for the webinar. We're also planning to put this webinar up on our website, as well as any resources that you provide to us to share on how we can support you at this moment, as well as how we can support you in the longer term. I would really love to be able to share that back with everybody. I want to, again, thank everybody that's doing this. The word tierra means soil in Spanish too. And so today is about the earth that we step on. It's about this amazing planet that we have. And I just want to thank everybody, especially your attendees, for being here. And we look forward to supporting you and being an ally to all the amazing work that you all do. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Good to meet you all. God bless you all.
Bye.